I suddenly regained my brightness and then found a tissue under the bed. It says, "Don't tell them, you can see." I turned my head and met an expressionless face. The woman's face was very close to me, with an exaggerated curve on the corner of her mouth. "Mom, I'm not sleepy anymore," I said with a smile. "Mom, feed you soup." The woman brought out soup from the room and fed me one mouthful at a time. During this period, I was very nervous, afraid that women would see that I could see. But fortunately, the woman did not notice my abnormality. The sweet soup in my mouth tastes like chewing wax, and I don't know if a woman has added anything to the soup. "What's the matter, Cherry? Your face looks ugly and you've been sweating incessantly." The woman still noticed something was wrong with me. She approached me with concern, but her eyes were fixed on mine. Her eyes are very large, but they are much whiter and have very small eyeballs. "I'm fine. I just don't know when my eyes will recover," I said with a feigned sense of disappointment. The woman smiled and said, "Cherry, don't worry, you will definitely get better." I showed a very ugly and stiff smile, and the woman lovingly touched my head. After returning to the room, I immediately unlocked the door and sat on the bed with a fearful expression on my face. Half a month ago, my husband Albert visited me once. My husband is a captain, and his work is very busy. At that time, he had a great conversation with my parents, and even got drunk by his father and spent the night in the villa. That is to say, half a month ago, my parents were still my true parents. I found my phone and used voice mode when I couldn't see it before. I immediately called Albert. The phone was quickly connected. Albert's voice remained as gentle as ever. "Cherry, what's the matter?" "I just got off the plane and can go see you now." "Albert?" "Deo!" Albert remained silent for a moment and immediately said, "Cherry, whatever you say, I will believe it." I told Albert everything. "Albert, Cherry, I'll be right over now. It takes about an hour to drive from the airport to here." The thought of Albert coming over reassured me a lot. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside the house. "Cherry, it's time to take the medicine." My father's voice rang outside. But I know, this is not my father, but that strange man. My heart beat faster and I looked out of the door with death. After a long silence, the man began to turn the door handle. "Why lock the door, Cherry? If you don't take the medicine, your eyes will be fine." The man urged me to open the door. I made up my mind that I would never open the door unless Albert came over. "Sleeping? This little guy." The man smiled helplessly, and then I heard his footsteps coming downstairs. I just breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, I felt something was wrong again. I have a strong feeling of being watched. I walked awkwardly to the door and listened to the movement outside. The door was quiet, and there was no sound. It sounds like that man has left. I couldn't rest assured and cautiously leaned down again, wanting to see the movement outside through the crack of the door. And at this moment, I met a pair of eyes with very small beads, but many white eyes. That man was lying under the crack of the door, his eyes fixed on me. At that moment, I was covered in cold sweat. I pretended not to see it and slowly groped on the ground, saying, "Strange, my phone just dropped on the ground." Those eyes disappeared from the gap. I collapsed on the ground, panting heavily. They are very strange. This strange pair of men and women appeared by my side, definitely with ulterior motives. I don't know where my parents have gone. The only thing I can do now is wait for Albert's arrival. After waiting in agony for an hour, I finally received Albert's call. Albert's voice on the other end of the phone sounded very anxious. "Cherry, where the hell are you now?" Albert's words made me feel very strange. "I'm right in the villa." "You've been here before. Haven't you found the wrong place?" I was also very anxious. "I'm in the villa, but neither you nor my uncle or aunt are here. It's covered in dust, as if no one has lived in it for a long time," Albert said in great confusion. His words also shocked me. Albert also sent me a photo. When I looked at the photo, it was indeed in the villa. Just like Albert said, the villa is filled with dust and seems to have been uninhabited for a long time. The sofa was covered in thick dust, and even a layer of spider webs formed in the corners of the walls. This is clearly different from the villa I am currently in. But the layout is exactly the same as my villa. I suddenly remembered that the man had placed a newspaper on the coffee table before and quickly asked Albert to take a photo of me. The photo quickly arrived. In the photo, there is indeed a newspaper on the coffee table, and from the perspective of time, it is today's newspaper. My heart is beating very hard. My hand holding my phone is constantly trembling. Albert, I'm right in the villa. If you don't believe me, I can video you. What's going on? Am I still alive? At that moment, my emotions almost collapsed and I cried. Albert, Cherry, don't cry. I absolutely believe you. What stupid words are you saying? I've already called the police. Don't be afraid. Now listen to me. Although I don't know what's going on, don't let the police find out you can see it until they arrive. See you? Although I don't know what the purpose of pretending to be uncles and aunts is, they probably won't hurt you yet, as long as you, without revealing any flaws. How much electricity do you have left on your phone? I need you and I to keep talking all the time. I glanced at the battery level of my phone. I don't have the habit of charging before bedtime, so my phone only has 15% battery left. This amount of electricity won't last long. I hurriedly searched for a charging cable. But strangely, I searched the entire room and couldn't find the charging cable. I suddenly remembered last night when I didn't know my parents were fake. I had a chat with that couple at the dinner table. At that time, I was listening to novels while charging my phone. The charging cable must have been forgotten there. The charging cable is downstairs. I'll go get it. Looking out the door, I gritted my teeth, twisted the door open, and went out. The corridor is very quiet. It seems that both the man and the woman are in my parents' room. I quickly walked downstairs to the restaurant and saw that the charging cable was indeed there. I was overjoyed, just about to unplug the charging cable, but I felt something strange behind me. I turned my head and met an expressionless face. The woman's face was very close to me, with an exaggerated curve on the corner of her mouth. Cherry, I just realized that your speed on the stairs is much faster than before. Can you see it? Fear rises from the soles of the feet to the top of the head in this moment. My heart is beating very hard. The woman's excessively white eyes glared at my eyes. Mom, I'll tell you when I see it. It's just that my phone runs out of battery, so I'm in a hurry to leave. I have been living here for over 3 months now. Naturally walking fast, I said very naturally. The woman smiled and reached out her hands with scarlet nail polish to touch my face. Her fingers were as cold as snakeskin, making me shiver. I thought Cherry could see it. Mom was overjoyed. If Cherry can see it, don't hide your father and mother, otherwise we will feel a bit unhappy in our hearts. Come on, give your phone to Mom. Mom will help you charge your phone. The woman took my phone and glanced down at it. You're still talking to Albert. I am extremely nervous. Albert's voice came from the other end of his phone. Mom, I used to spend too little time with Cherry before. This time, I took 14 days off and came back specifically to accompany him. Cherry. The woman smiled and said, come here quickly and let your father make your favorite braised pork belly. Cherry misses you so much. I'll help Cherry first by phone. Hang up. Charging and answering the phone is too unsafe. Her voice and tone sound like a good mother who loves her daughter very much. But only I know. She looks like she's staring at her phone, but her eyes are tilted at me. After the woman left, my back was already wet with cold sweat. Even my legs couldn't help but tremble. Since Albert cannot find here, I must leave the villa. I am determined to leave here immediately when my phone is charged to 30%. Suddenly, I heard a squeak coming from the kitchen. The door of the cabinet suddenly opened a gap. I looked over at the sound, but my face suddenly turned pale with fear. In the cabinet, a pair of pale and bloodless hands drooped softly. There is a familiar mole on the fingers of these hands. This is my mother's hand. My eyes were red and I trembled all over, walking step by step to the cabinet. These hands have no temperature and they have even turned blue. At first glance, it's not a living hand. My mother is not missing, but murdered. This couple killed my mother and hid here. At this moment, my first reaction was to run. When I turned my head, I saw a man walking across from me with a smile. His gaze first fell on the hand outside the cabinet. Cherry, what are you doing here? Why are your eyes so red? It looks like you're crying. The man's voice was very concerned, but I could clearly see that he picked up a sharp fruit knife from one side of the knife holder. The man approached me with a fruit knife, and he suddenly lifted the knife and stabbed me in the eye. The tip of the knife stopped just 1 centimeter from my eye. In this moment, I burst into a strong desire to survive, with only one thought. I cannot be seen. Seeing my eyes blinking, as if he hadn't seen the fruit knife in front of him, the man slowly put down the knife. Cherry, your mother said Albert would come and Dad would cook his favorite braised pork belly. The man smiled and put down his knife. Then I saw him open the cabinet. My mother's head rolled out like this and rolled in front of me, her protruding eyes staring straight at me.